8-year-old Lily's innocent question silenced the room. Donald Trump paused, his expression softening as he shared a deeply personal story. What happened next left everyone stunned. Did you know that 100% of illegal migrant crime is preventable? For years, politicians have failed to address this issue effectively. Now, Trump claims to have found an unexpected solution that could change everything we thought we knew about immigration policy. His plan promises to tackle not only the symptoms, but the root causes of this complex issue. As anticipation built, no one expected the answer that was about to unfold, a proposal that could redefine America's approach to immigration and public safety. The evening air in Shreveport, Louisiana hung heavy with anticipation as Donald Trump's motorcade pulled up to the small church fellowship hall. Trump's familiar figure filled the doorway, his presence both larger than life and surprisingly human in this modest setting. As Trump began to speak, his usual bravado seemed tempered by the intimacy of the gathering. He talked about jobs, security, and making America great again. But something was different tonight. The crowd sensed it, leaning forward in their seats. Then a small hand rose tentatively from the third row. 8-year-old Lily, her blonde pigtails barely visible above the sea of adults, caught Trump's eye. "Mr. Trump, why did that bad man hurt my daddy?" Her innocent question pierced the air. Time seemed to stand still. Trump's face softened, his carefully crafted persona melting away. He stepped down from the podium and knelt beside Lily. "Can you tell me what happened, sweetheart?" Lily's voice trembled as she began. "Daddy worked at the grocery store. He didn't come home one night. Then the police came." Her words trailed off, choked by tears. Trump listened intently, his eyes glistening. Taking Lily's small hand in his, Trump's voice was thick with emotion. "Lily, I promise you, I will do everything in my power to make sure this never happens to another family." Standing up, Trump faced the crowd, a new determination etched across his features. "This isn't about politics," he declared. "This is about protecting our children, our families, our communities." The energy in the room crackled with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. Trump continued, "Looking into Lily's eyes, I realize we've been approaching this all wrong. It's about people. It's about Lily and her dad and countless others whose stories we may never hear." As Trump spoke, the crowd began to nod, murmurs of agreement rippling through the room. He outlined his vision for a comprehensive approach to illegal migrant crime, addressing both immediate security concerns and root causes. He spoke of a future where families like Lily's could feel safe in their own communities. By the time Trump finished speaking, the atmosphere in the church hall had transformed. What began as a routine campaign stop had become a pivotal moment for everyone present. As he made his way back through the crowd, people reached out to share their own stories, to thank him for listening, their eyes filled with a newfound hope and determination. The morning sun painted the Texas sky as Donald Trump's motorcade wound through El Paso. The border town seemed eerily quiet with boarded-up storefronts and empty playgrounds. Lily's story from Shreveport still weighed heavily on Trump's mind as he sought answers in this place where so many stories of hope and heartbreak began. At the local police station, Sheriff Martinez greeted Trump with a mixture of respect and weariness. "Mr. Trump," he said, his voice gravelly, "welcome to Ground Zero." Inside, maps covered the walls, red pins marking incidents that had torn families apart. Trump listened intently as the sheriff detailed the overwhelming challenges. "These are real people, caught in a system that's failing everyone," Sheriff Martinez explained, his eyes locking with Trump's. As Trump visited an overcrowded detention center, the air thick with desperation, he approached a young mother cradling her infant. "Can you tell me your story?" he asked softly. Maria's harrowing tale of escape from violence unfolded, her eyes welling with tears. Trump felt something shift within him. The complexity of the situation, the human cost on all sides, became crystal clear. That night, unable to sleep, he paced his hotel room, his mind racing with the faces and stories he'd encountered. "We can't keep treating this as just a security issue," Trump muttered to himself. "There's so much more at stake here." As dawn broke, Trump stood at the window, watching the sun rise over the border wall. In that moment, a new sense of purpose crystallized within him. He turned to his aide who had just entered the room. "Get me experts from all sides of this issue," Trump said, his voice steady and clear. "We need to rewrite the narrative on immigration." Over the next few days, Trump immersed himself in discussions, challenging his own long-held beliefs. He sought out perspectives he'd never considered before, determined to find a solution that addressed the root causes of the crisis. The journey that had begun with a little girl's question was transforming into something much bigger, a reimagining of what true border security and immigration reform could look like. As Trump's new plan began to take shape, he couldn't help but think of Lily and how her simple question had set in motion a chain of events that might just change the course of history. The fluorescent lights of the White House Situation Room buzzed softly, casting a harsh glow over the faces gathered around the long table. Donald Trump sat at the head, his tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, and hair slightly disheveled from hours of intense focus. "All right, let's see what we've got," Trump said, his voice carrying a weight of responsibility that seemed to surprise even his closest aides. One by one, experts presented their findings, laying bare the stark realities of a system in crisis. As the data flowed, Trump's brow furrowed deeper. The numbers painted a picture both smaller and larger than he had anticipated. Illegal migrant crime rates were lower than he'd believed, yet the impact on affected communities was far more devastating than he'd realized. Each statistic represented a shattered life, a family torn apart, a community living in fear. Trump leaned back in his chair, his mind reeling. How could he reconcile these findings with his long-held beliefs? He thought of the passionate speeches he'd given, the promises he'd made. But it was the patterns emerging from the data that truly caught Trump's attention. His pen moved furiously across his notepad as connections began to form in his mind. Poverty, desperation, lack of opportunity. These factors seemed to transcend borders, creating a perfect storm that fueled both illegal migration and crime. "Wait," Trump interrupted, leaning forward. "Show me that chart again." His finger traced a line across the screen, revealing a correlation between economic instability in certain regions and spikes in illegal border crossings. "It's not just about what's happening here," he mused. "It's about what's driving people to come in the first place." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Trump stood, pacing the length of the table. "We've been looking at this all wrong," he declared. "It's not just about stronger borders or harsher penalties. We need to address the root causes." As night turned to day, the Situation Room became a hive of activity. Trump called for more data, more perspectives, determined to understand every facet of the problem. He challenged his team to think beyond traditional solutions, to consider approaches that might have seemed impossible just days ago. The sun was peeking through the windows when Trump finally leaned back, a look of quiet determination on his face. "I think we've got something here," he said softly, "something that could change everything." As his team filed out, Trump remained seated, lost in thought. He knew that what he was about to propose would challenge long-held beliefs on both sides of the aisle. It would require courage, compromise, and a willingness to see beyond partisan divides. Trump stood, straightening his tie as he prepared to face the world with his newfound knowledge. As he stepped out of the Situation Room, a sense of purpose unlike anything he'd experienced before washed over him. The journey that had begun with a simple question was about to transform into a bold new vision for addressing illegal migrant crime, a vision that would surprise everyone, himself included. The tension in the room was palpable as Donald Trump stepped into the ornate conference room of the Capitol. Faces both familiar and new turned to watch his entrance, a mixture of curiosity and skepticism etched across their features. This gathering of unlikely allies and sworn opponents had been brought together by the urgency of a crisis that had touched every corner of the nation. As Trump took his seat, the room erupted into a cacophony of voices. Passionate arguments flew back and forth, each person convinced their solution was the key to solving the complex issue of illegal migrant crime. Trump listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. Suddenly, a quiet voice cut through the chaos. "Mr. President," Congressman James Chen began, his voice thick with emotion. "Before we continue, there's something I need to share." The room fell silent as Chen recounted his story. "My cousin, she was killed during a robbery by an undocumented immigrant who had been deported multiple times." As Chen spoke, Trump felt a familiar ache in his chest, remembering Lily's tear-filled eyes in Shreveport and Maria's haunted gaze in the detention center. Trump leaned forward, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "Congressman, I'm truly sorry for your loss. This isn't about politics. It's about people, real lives affected on all sides of this issue." His words seemed to break a dam. One by one, others shared their experiences, stories of families torn apart, of communities living in fear, of economic struggles driving desperate choices. Look, Trump said, rising to his feet, we've all been approaching this from different angles, but we're all trying to solve the same problem. What if we combined our expertise? What if we looked at this not just as a domestic issue, but as part of a larger global picture? Skepticism gave way to cautious interest as Trump outlined the connections he'd discovered, the link between economic instability abroad and increased illegal immigration, the role of climate change in driving mass migration, the impact of foreign aid on border security. Ideas began to flow from all corners of the room, building upon each other in a way that would have seemed impossible just hours before. By the time the meeting adjourned, an unlikely alliance had formed. Trump stood back, watching with a mixture of pride and humility. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope that a comprehensive solution might be within reach. As the last attendees filed out, Senator Hernandez approached Trump. I never thought I'd say this, Mr. President, but I'm impressed. You've given us all a lot to think about. Trump nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Thank you, Senator. Now comes the hard part, turning these ideas into action. The White House Situation Room hummed with nervous energy as Donald Trump's team gathered around a massive whiteboard. The air was thick with anticipation, and the smell of coffee lingered from countless refills. Markers squeaked against the smooth surface as ideas flowed freely, each building upon the last in a frenzy of creativity. Amidst the activity, a young woman with thick-rimmed glasses and a messy ponytail stood quietly at the edge. Her eyes darted between the whiteboard and her laptop, fingers flying over the keys. Suddenly, she raised her hand hesitantly. The room fell silent. Mr. President, she began softly, I think I might have an idea. Trump nodded encouragingly. What if we used artificial intelligence to revolutionize our approach to border security? As she outlined her concept, skepticism gave way to excitement. Trump's eyes lit up, his mind racing with possibilities. The young tech expert, initially shy, now stood confidently at the center, gesturing animatedly. Hours melted away as they delved into the plan. Trump moved between experts, asking questions and offering insights. As dawn broke, a comprehensive plan took shape. The AI-driven system would analyze data to identify economic instability and security threats in real time, allowing for proactive interventions. It would coordinate with partners to address push factors in countries of origin, reducing motivations for illegal migration. The system would act like a watchful guardian, constantly learning and adapting. It would facilitate efficient and compassionate processing of asylum seekers, ensuring those in genuine need received help quickly. Trump thought of Maria, the woman he'd met in the detention center, and how this system could have prevented her painful separation from her children. As the last details fell into place, Trump surveyed the room with pride. The team that had started as a disparate group now stood united, energized by their creation. They had reimagined border security for the 21st century. The young tech expert caught Trump's eye and smiled shyly. He walked over, placing a hand on her shoulder. You've done something incredible here, he said softly. This could change everything. As the team dispersed, Trump remained at the whiteboard, tracing the intricate web of ideas. He thought of Lily in Shreveport, of Maria, of countless others whose lives could be transformed. This wasn't just about securing borders. It was about building bridges, using technology to create a more just and compassionate world. The sun had barely risen over Washington, D.C. when Donald Trump's motorcade pulled away from the White House. His mind raced with the AI-driven plan they'd crafted, but he knew something was missing. He directed his driver to make an unscheduled stop at a community center. Trump stepped inside, catching everyone off guard. I'm here to listen, he said softly, settling into a worn chair. Maria approached, trembling. Mr. President, I fled violence for my child's future, she began. Trump leaned in, his brow furrowed. Tell me more, he urged gently. Carlos, a dreamer, spoke next. I want to be a doctor to give back to this country, he said passionately. Trump's expression softened, surprise flickering across his face. Hours passed as Trump moved from family to family. He sampled empanadas, chatted with a Vietnamese family about their nail salon, and admired textiles in an Ethiopian-owned boutique. At an interfaith gathering, religious leaders spoke of compassion and welcoming strangers. Trump felt something shift within him, a subtle realignment of his perspective. Suddenly, a woman's cry pierced the air. Trump knelt beside her, taking her hand. My son was killed by a drunk driver last month, an undocumented immigrant, she whispered tearfully. Trump's chest tightened. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We need a solution that keeps everyone safe without demonizing entire communities." The woman's eyes met his, a flicker of understanding passing between them. As midnight approached, Trump gathered his team. "We need to make changes," he announced. For hours, they refined the plan, balancing technology with compassionate policies addressing the complex realities of immigration. Dawn was breaking as Trump looked out over the city, his heart heavy with the stories he'd heard and the task ahead. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of hope. The White House conference room buzzed with nervous energy as dawn approached. Bleary-eyed advisors huddled around laptops, their faces illuminated by the harsh glow of screens. At the center of it all stood Donald Trump, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up, poring over a stack of handwritten notes. The air crackled with possibility as they refined their plan, balancing cutting-edge technology with the human stories that had touched Trump's heart. Hours later, the press room at the White House pulsed with anticipation. Cameras flashed and reporters whispered amongst themselves, speculating about the nature of Trump's announcement. When the president finally approached the podium, the room fell silent, all eyes fixed on his somber expression. "My fellow Americans," Trump began, his voice steady and measured, "I stand before you today to address an issue that has divided our nation for far too long." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room. "Before I outline our plan, I want to share a story with you, a story that changed everything for me." Trump's voice softened as he recounted his encounter with 8-year-old Lily in Shreveport, Louisiana. As he described the pain in her eyes and the tremor in her voice, many in the room found themselves blinking back tears. He wove in other stories: Maria's trembling hands, Carlos's passionate dreams, the grieving mother's tear-stained cheeks, each one a testament to the human cost of the current system. The room held its breath as Trump presented shocking statistics that challenged preconceived notions. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, growing louder as he began to outline the innovative aspects of his plan. He described a revolutionary AI-driven system that would enhance border security while addressing economic instability and security threats in real time. But it was his emphasis on the human element that drew nods from unexpected quarters. "This isn't about technology alone," Trump insisted, his voice filled with conviction. "It's about creating pathways to legal immigration, investing in education and job training, and working with our international partners to address the root causes of mass migration." As Trump concluded his speech, the room erupted into a frenzy of questions and excited chatter. Even his harshest critics seemed stunned into silence. Trump paused before leaving the podium, his gaze sweeping across the sea of faces before him. In that instant, he knew that regardless of the political battles to come, they had taken the first step towards a truly transformative solution, one that honored both the security of the nation and the dignity of every individual. The nation held its breath as Trump stepped up to the podium, his journey from reluctant hero to visionary leader etched in his face. As he outlined his groundbreaking plan, blending technology with compassionate policy, a shift rippled through the crowd. Even critics found themselves nodding along. Yet, as applause faded, reality set in. The true test lay in implementation. Months later, Lily's family found health care, Maria secured a job, and the grieving mother joined a support group. As hope blossomed, a question lingered. Could this progress withstand partisan politics? Only time would tell if compassion and security could truly walk hand in hand.